Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today, the man who is thoughts become things, Neo-Positivity. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
It helps if I add everybody in. It works a whole lot better that way. And Neil, I gotta tell you, I was in touch with Debbie G yesterday. She's improving. She's feeling much better. She's not joining us because she says if she starts to talk, she becomes raspy in about 30 seconds. So she's not quite ready to return. But, yeah, her whole attitude was really up. So that was good to hear, especially as we're approaching the holidays, you know.
Always. Debbie G, a big light around her.
Debbie G, Zane, Landin is our guest today, and Zane, Debbie G is our other co-host on Fridays. And when the three of us get going, first of all, the energy is like through the roof. Second of all, I'm lucky if I get a word in edgewise. Those two just kind of take over. Because all three of us have been podcast hosts, you know, so you get three hosts in one place, you know, it's kind of like putting three Walter Cronkites on the same stage. I was like, it just doesn't work. No, but it works great, actually. It works really great.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad. Well, I don't know her situation, but I'm glad she's apparently feeling better, though.
Yeah, she went through a medical procedure. It was kind of a tough one, but she's pulling through like a trooper. So really good. But anyway, Zane Landin, you are joining us today, and thank you very much for being on the show. You have one of the more interesting backgrounds of anybody that we've had on the show lately. And whenever I run into somebody who has got so many cool things to talk about, I don't really like to be the one to try to do the to do the potted biography because I feel like I'm going to screw it up. So I'm going to ask you to do it. So just like spend a minute or two. Tell us about Zane Landin.
Sure. I mean, 24 years old here, native Californian, been here my whole life. I will say I am moving to Washington, D.C. next.
Whoa.
More like next week. Yeah.
Wow.
D.C. next week, and it's like overwhelming that it's so quick. But no, I've been preparing for it. It sounds like I'm not prepared. But it's my first move. I've never actually lived on my own because I went to university at Cal Poly Pomona, and it's probably like 20 minutes away from me. So I never had experience of living alone independently that way. So it'll be a new journey. And yeah, I'm working for National Geographic Society. So,
wow.
And there's two National Geographic partners is the Disney stuff, the documentaries, the magazine, and then the society is they provide, you know, the grants and the financial support to like the explorers and the researchers. So it's a new position. It's my first entry level position. Cause I just graduated in May. So I'm doing internal communications work. So my title is internal communications specialist. There's that.
That's a great way to start off everything. Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us more.
Yeah. I mean, so, I'll start with, you know, in university, I didn't really realize that you could actually pursue communication and storytelling as a career. Like I knew that there were directors and actors, and I wasn't interested in going into entertainment. So I didn't know where I could use my skill set in like writing and communication and public speaking. I always loved doing those things. Not necessarily the best at them. I will say I struggled with writing throughout growing up. I struggled with writing because I think that they teach you how to write, but they teach you how to write a certain way. And it wasn't that I loved writing until I was able to explore like poetry, where I was able to kind of write anything I wanted. I can make any comparison, even if it was complete nonsense. You can still do it because it's your interpretation. It's how you feel about it. And I absolutely love the creative freedom. And so then I was able to translate that into all the other forms of writing. And that's where I love it. Now I get to write for different blogs and publications. And like Entrepreneur, I do write for entrepreneurs. So I've written about different things. A lot of it is like workplace wellness and inclusivity. I wrote an article about mental health culture, also body positivity culture, like hiring people with different bodies and having conversations about that. Then my third article, I wrote about how to create more of a inclusive culture around grief. How do you actually talk about grief in a positive, healthy way in the workplace? I know some people don't want to encroach on that territory because it's like personal mixing with professional. But I think that the amount of grief people experienced during the pandemic, I think it's worth talking about. And I think even in a professional setting, I think it could be good for people. I even connected with a mental health advocate who at their company, they do grief chats. Like they'll like go on Zoom and they'll talk about grief in the workplace. And I think it's interesting. Anyway, so I had a mentor who taught me all about that. She had her degrees in communication, and I decided to change my major after I worked with her. And then after that, I've been able to do a lot of different internships. I worked at General Motors. I did 2 summer internships with them, and throughout the year, I also did an internship with NASA, a Jet Propulsion Laboratory, which was very interesting. And then, luckily, I found my way to Nat Geo Society. So that's kind of the story of my professional journey so far, doing communications work.
Well, hey, for a beginning career, that's a great few steps in a beginning career, I have to say. That's really good. Now, this is one of the more interesting things. Of course, you come to us the way so many of our guests do, through podmatch.com. Mm-hmm. And in your Podmatch profile, you said something really interesting. You used a descriptor that one doesn't hear very often because it's usually considered to be a pejorative, but you treat it as if it was something to feel proud about. You said that you self-identify as Hispanic, queer, mm-hmm. and disabled. I thought mm-hmm. that was a really interesting thing to say. So mm-hmm. tell us about that a little bit.
I tell people this because I think that, like you said, I think that in actuality, being these identities will definitely hold you back. You will experience barriers outside of your control, and it's very frustrating how to navigate those. But I think we're moving into like a space where, while there is still hardships that come with those identities, that it's a good time to have those identities though. And there's a lot of
interesting way of saying it.
Right. No, I think that though, like I see a lot of scholarships and programs that are designed for people of color, and I think leverage that. I think utilize those opportunities. That's what I think. I think that because people are seeing more of, a benefit to having these diverse perspectives, and that they're giving resources for them to thrive, unlike how it's been for many years. I see it as a positive. I say, you know what, own your Hispanicness, own your race, own your gender, because people are seeing the value in it now, and people are seeing the need to include everyone in these conversations in the workplace and all aspects of society. And it's not, of course, everywhere like that. There are times where I've gotten some feedback for being queer, and people don't like that. So I have experienced that. I've experienced people telling me I'm not Hispanic, people saying I don't look Hispanic, so I'm not Hispanic. Different forms of ways where I don't get to embrace who I am. But at this point, I've surrounded myself with people who do embrace who I am, and now it's like wherever I go, this is who I am. Hispanic, queer, disabled, especially disabled, because for the longest time I experienced mental health conditions, and I am neurodiverse, and so that translates into how I navigate everything and how I view society, how I work with people, and everything. So for me, it's like, I think we need to be proud and prideful of our identities, of whatever our experiences are, because that's what makes us who we are, and that's the value of what we bring to the table, and I think it needs to be celebrated.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about it in terms of how there's greater external acceptance, but what I hear in most of what you said there is greater internal acceptance, accepting of yourself, and not just accepting, embracing yourself, which that's the part where I just say, yeah, all right, way to go. I like that.
Yeah, I spoke on because my degree is in public relations, and I was invited to speak at this Hispanic PR association. They had a breakfast, and there are very few Hispanics in the PR industry, kind of like a lot of industries, when it comes to minorities. But I don't remember the exact statistic, but it's really low. And I know, and I said, don't be discouraged by that. It may look like there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and there is. But it's like, also know your worth, that you're here as a rare person in this industry, which means that you really bring value to this place, and I think you need to start thinking that way, and that instead of saying, oh, there's not many people like me. And I get that's frustrating to be the only one in the room. Like, it's very isolating. Like, I've been there where I felt that, where I'm the only queer person. I honestly hate that feeling sometimes, where it's like, I can't relate to anyone, or sometimes you bear the responsibility of educating people on your identities too, like when you're kind of tokenized in a way. So it's very frustrating at times, but I've kind of come to a place where, no, actually, my perspective is unique here in this space, and I'm going to own it. And it took a lot to come to that. It's not like 100% confident, because when I'm in this space in that moment, sometimes I do feel held back at times,
You know what? Can I offer you a little bit of advice in that area?
There we go.
Because I've being the only black guy in every room that I walk into for the past, since I've been coming up. Yeah. When I had normal jobs and was doing normal stuff, I wasn't. But since I've been on the come up, to get into those rooms and get into those higher places, it's majority, white guys. Yeah. To better wrap my head around this, I try to make sense of things so that it comes to the forefront of my mind when I need it to. without me proactively doing it. It just does it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when you see, they always have this joke, like when there's a tragedy or something and a news van is there and they interview the craziest black person they can find. Yeah. And they're like, hey man, I'm crack. They're just saying the craziest things, and that's what they use to represent us. Although that is a stereotype and it's horrible that they do that, there is some truth in every joke. Most of the people from the hood I grew up with, I would not take to a board meeting with me. Mm-hmm. Even if I put a suit on them and put a haircut and all that other stuff, I still wouldn't, because it would come out their mouth. And now, I talk with slang sometimes, but they talk, an extreme amount of slang. So it's like, when I'm in those situations, I'm like, all right, well, quite frankly, for the betterment of what I'm trying to do, I'm glad I'm the only black dude in this room. Mm. Because I know they're already looking at us a certain way. Mm-hmm. And for me to be in there representing, I'm good, I'm on the up and up, I'm doing my thing, I got a good mind. And for somebody on the other side of the room to be representing the bottom half, the negative half or whatever, I just don't need that. I got enough stuff working against me. So if you could take any of that I just said with you, for me, it just eliminated any doubt or negative feeling I had about being the only black dude in the room. Because I remember it was happening everywhere I went, and I quickly realized, if I am going to make a come up in whatever I'm pursuing, I have to be okay with being the only black dude in this amphitheater filled with 2,000. I got to be okay with it. So I had to really wrap my head around it, and that was instant for me. Yeah. And real quick, I wanted to touch on the school system a little bit. You said something that pulled on one of my heartstrings. Mm-hmm. I hated writing. Yeah. My whole life. I hated it. I hated reading my whole life. It just wasn't, and the school system made it that way. Yeah. Because the second I started writing about the law of attraction, it became my favorite thing to do. To this day, I might not write it with my hands. Sometimes I might speak it into a recorder and then voice dictate that onto a piece of paper, but I still consider it writing. It is not one of my favorite thing to do. And the way the school, now think about that. My favorite thing to do, something I was born to do, the school system is designed to make me hate. Mm-hmm. And so was that what your experience with it was?
And again, also being neurodiverse, I have a hard time concentrating. And so when you're in a classroom and it's very structured and you have to read certain things, luckily I was on a 504 plan where I was given flexibility and, accommodations for it. But yeah, it was still very hard. And still I have somewhat trouble reading because I get distracted very easily. But that's
Zane, let me ask you something, because that's a term I don't know. Neurodiverse. Can you define that for me?
Well, neurodiverse is like, disabilities in your brain. So I do think some people don't say neurodiverse is mental health. I think mental health, learning disabilities, stuff like that. So a lot of times disabilities that impact how you concentrate and how you work, but you don't necessarily see them. It's basically like the term neurotypical is like people who don't have different things that will impact our brain that way. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. That gives me some idea. I appreciate that. Yeah. One thing that kept going through my mind too, as you were talking then, as Neil jumped in with what he was saying, which was great. In both cases, what I was hearing kind of behind both your messages was, this is an ongoing thing. It's not something that you snap your fingers and you've broken the barrier and you're done, right? Because like all of us, we're going through life and we're constantly running up to different kinds of challenges depending on who we are, where we are, what we are, all that kind of thing. But what it comes down to is, how do we meet them? Every single day, yeah, we got more growing to do. Yeah, we got more improving to do. We got more things to work on. How are we going to approach that? Are we going to treat it as one and done? Or are we going to treat it as day to day?
When it comes to the whole reading, mine was a snap of a finger. Not reading, but writing. It was as soon as I found something I was passionate about writing about, I didn't want to stop writing about it. And It's been 14 years now. So that was a snap.
You call that one and done. To me, I call that day to day, because every single day you're writing.
I mean, the transition, it was like that for me. Now, how do we change the school system from doing what they've done? I believe you would be the man for that. Walt has created a school. He was part of the start of a school where it lets the students basically create the curriculum, and they're not just, doing whatever willy-nilly. They're getting responsibilities. They're learning things that normal schools don't teach you. And Walt, every time we talk about this, I completely forget. Does the last name Ellie ring a bell to you? E-L-Y. My lead flight instructor for paramotor, not for airplanes, him and his wife helped found a school in Connecticut that sounds exactly like yours.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, this would be so crazy for them to be on the same page, but we'll talk about all that later.
And Zane, I'm in Connecticut. That's why he's drawing that connection.
Okay, cool.
That's where I founded the school I was involved in. But to answer the question you were raising, Neil, I think the answer is you don't try to change the existing school system. You create something new. I mean, that's what we did. We created a new school. And, as with anything that breaks the mold and so forth, we ran into all kinds of resistance along the way. But, in the end, that doesn't matter. What matters is we created something new. And that creation, Neil and I talk about this all the time. It creates a vibration that carries on throughout the energetic realm of society.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter if most people never heard of it. The energy carries anyway. So I wouldn't even consider trying to change the existing school system.
Yeah.
I'd be simply trying to change my own mindset to what can I create as an alternative to it? How can I offer something different from it? Which isn't all that hard to do, by the way, because if you come up with something that's even a little bit different, you've already broken the mold. It doesn't take a whole lot.
There's an analogy I want to throw out there real quick. You just gave me a visual, Walt. I picture like a bunch of strings. Picture like two poles with a bunch of strings connected in between them.
Okay.
And each string is vibrating at its own individual frequency.
Ooh, I like
okay. Now the world as its society, as the way it stands, is a bunch of strings vibrating at different frequencies, a bunch of notions, the way things operate. When you have a thought about something, it's like you're sending a vibration in that direction and you're slightly changing the vibration of one of those strings. So your thought is impacting the world. It might be small at first, but it can have a ripple to other strings. But the fact of the matter is each and every thought is having some kind of impact, some kind of shift on that group of strings that we'll just call what is or how things are. So yeah, contributing that mental way, seeing it better. I always say that, if you want to get out of war, if you want the world to get better, you got to stop talking about how crappy it is. You got to see some light at the end of the tunnel, or you got to see the roses, stop and smell the roses that are currently there. That's how you change the world. Stop and smell the roses or see the light at the end of the tunnel and cherish it.
I love also how you described the fact that not only are you impacting that one particular frequency, but there's also an impact on other frequencies. I mean, the real world, the sound analogy of that is what they call harmonics. So a harmonic would be like you have a sound that vibrates at 440 hertz, right? And if you double that to 880 hertz, that's a harmonic of the 440. So you vibrate the 440, you get a little bit of vibration at the 880 and at the 1760, and and there are a few others in between there too.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah. That's how have you ever heard a pure tonal note generated by a machine? If you've ever heard it, it's very flat. There's no affect to it. There's no resonance. It's just it's that kind of a tone. But when you hear a tone generated by a musical instrument or by an electronic device that knows how to mimic what a musical instrument does, if you, for instance, let's say you hit a note on a piano. Now, a piano, of course, is like this big wooden box with a bunch of strings and keys that are interacting with little hammers that hit the strings. Okay? When you hit a string, that sound resonates into the wood of that box. It actually resonates with some of the strings around it too, but mostly in the wood of that box. And the wood of the box adds these harmonics. That's where the richness of a note comes from.
Is that why they open some of them?
Yeah, well, sure. Well, they open it because they want more of that sound to come out. But it's the sound bouncing around in that wood that creates that piano sound we all know. Or same thing with a guitar or a violin or anything that has a physical instrumentality to it, or even a brass instrument. The sound is being created. The unique sound of an instrument is being created by the harmonics that go along with the notes. So those harmonics are incredibly important because they're what provide richness in life.
So in wind instruments like a flute or clarinet, it's the sound bouncing off the inside of the tube that's really making it beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I never understood. I never thought about that.
Yeah. So when you look at it that way and then apply it to the way we talk about it metaphorically, and it's not just metaphor, it's actually real. When you're putting a vibration out there, if you're letting that vibration play with the harmonics of your world around you, those harmonics give it richness.
Yeah.
They give it vibrancy. So even though you're not seeing or hearing where the signal is going out to, it's creating vibrancy in ways you don't even see. You don't even hear.
I bang with it. I like that. Gary Malkin. Did I meet Gary Malkin on this show?
Not on this one, I don't think, no.
7-time Grammy winning composer. I think it's a composer, but he makes music for movies. He's got a bunch of Grammys. He's into that. He uses like theta, like beta waves and stuff like that in his music. And certain songs of his, when you play them, it hits you in your face.
Yeah.
Like a blanket of energy just hit you and it stays there until you hit pause. And you can feel it. Yeah. And I think that's the coolest thing ever.
So when Zane, when you were talking about having that impact on other people, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about the harmonics of it.
Wow. And I want to go back though, because Neil, what you said about the vibrations that everyone has, I thought was really interesting. Because I always said, I always think that they kind of paint. This isn't real, of course, but when they paint like time travel in movies, I find pretty interesting. I personally don't think that would be accurate. To me, I think that for something big to change, you have to have a big change when you go back in time. But I think that like you said, your existence there, your vibrations are already going to make a huge impact on the world because you're not supposed to be there. So like you said, your energy is already going to impact everything. And I think just you being there changes everything, not from one big event you had. So I think that was interesting. Just what I thought.
What's it, the butterfly effect?
Yeah, your existence there, it's going to change the butterfly effect or do something drastic could change in a good or bad way. I don't know.
And then there's a second concept that goes along with that. It kind of tag teams on it, which is attention to it. Because as you give attention to something, the momentum of it increases.
Yeah.
So it can become stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. So that butterfly effect you're talking about, you give it attention to it, man, that thing's going to explode. It's just going to reach a point where it goes boom.
Alternate universes. Don't get me started. Nah.
I think we just did. Sorry, it's too late, Neil.
I like the thought of for every decision you make, there's a universe created where the opposite decision was made.
Yeah. Oh wow. Totally. I think I remember having a daydream where it was like, I had like powers or something, but like I would go back and see millions of versions of myself, of every single version that didn't have a decision or made a different decision. And in the story, I grab a bunch of them and they help me, but they serve as different identities because they make a totally different decision that you did. And then they have a completely different life. They're a completely different person. So I agree with that. It's interesting.
You said something really interesting just now. You said that they help you when you go and look at those alternatives. Give us an example. Like, can you think of one time, one particular instance you kind of did this mental journey and you replayed something that happened in your life, you played a little bit differently as if it was that alternative universe and it helped you?
I just think that, there are certain decisions we make, and it's not the best decision. And it didn't turn out how you wanted it to. And I think that you can reflect and look at your alternative person who didn't make that decision. Maybe they're doing well. And then you kind of look at them and you go, maybe I should have been more thoughtful about this. And it just kind of makes you think more about the actual consequences that can happen with your actions. You're more mindful of the decisions you make. And sometimes even a decision you make that you feel in your heart is good, sometimes we don't listen to the other side, which is like the intuition, that even though your heart's telling you this is a good path, your intuition was saying maybe it's not the best thing for you. So that's how I would paint it.
Interesting. How have you learned to distinguish between the voices? Because when I see that $1,200 Gucci bag, I'm like, ooh, that's me. To me, that's my intuition saying you deserve it, get it. And then there's a part that goes, man, I'd love to have it, but not right now. It's Christmas. I got a bunch of money tied up in crypto. You start analyzing. And then you got the ego who steps in after that. It's like, with all its ugly negative narratives. And sometimes you miss the first one. You miss the intuition. So how have you learned to distinguish between the voices?
gosh. Sometimes I think you have to like consider them separate identities or realities. Like you think of one, you go, okay, that's this version of me saying that I deserve this. That version of me saying it's not good. I got to step back and have a third perspective and look at both of them and think, what's actually going to help me progress and grow as an actual person? Do I need that bag? Do I really need it? Or is this job good for me? Is it really going to challenge me in a good way? So not even in the third perspective, you're looking at it, like a field. And for me, it's like, you consider all those things. You consider, is it good for you? But also you need to consider, are you actually going to grow from this? Because I think sometimes people will not choose to decide or pursue a job or opportunity because they're scared of it. And sometimes, even though your gut's telling you maybe this isn't for you, because I think sometimes, even though we need to follow our intuition, I think sometimes our intuition is based off of fears. And you can still get a somewhat gut feeling because you're kind of telling yourself that. So yeah, sometimes I think you have to look, because like even with the job, the job in Nat Geo. So again, I didn't want to move to DC when I first, applied for the job. And it took me a while when I got the job to decide I need to do this, even though it's uncomfortable. It's not what I want. I would love to stay here in California, but what is actually going to challenge me in a good, positive way where I'm going to grow and be like a better version. So I think we have to sometimes go against what even our intuition is saying, if that makes any sense.
When did DC become real for you? How long it's been? Since you were like, oh crap, I'm going to have to move to DC. Like, how long has it been?
I think like this is kind of ridiculous, but when I applied for the job, I saw it was hybrid, but like I just was in love with the position, not just Nat Geo, but it was a position I was looking for. Like that's exactly what I was looking for. And it had the experience that I had, because a lot of the jobs I was seeing wanted years of experience that I didn't have. I think it was when like I was at like almost the final interview where I was like, okay, I actually have a good shot, which means I'm going to have to move to DC, because I kind of forgot that whole process. I was just focused on getting the job. And then I was like, oh yeah, I have to move to DC. So it kind of hit me later, which is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, but I off and on when I got the job, like that whole weekend when I got the job, I was off and on saying yes and no. Like I was completely committed. Then I was like, no, I can't do this.
So how long has it been since then? Month, week?
No, that was like the end of October. So that was like a month-ish ago or a month, almost 2 months. Sorry.
So it's still a little fresh, but it's in there.
Definitely. But I think it's something that, we need. And I think that there are things that we're going to have to do that are uncomfortable that are going to help us grow.
I love that last bit. You mentioned that before, doing something that's uncomfortable, falling out of that comfort zone, not falling out, walking out deliberately, eyes open.
Yeah.
That's valuable. That's really valuable, because that's basically you taking charge of your own life, saying, you know what? I deserve this thing. It may scare me. It may actually terrify me. I still deserve it. It's good for me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really powerful and impactful. And that can only produce good. That's the other thing that's wild about that. It can only produce good. We're so used to the idea that if we take these risks, not that there aren't risks that you can take that can actually be harmful to yourself. There certainly are. But I think most often when we're talking about these kinds of risks, we're talking about risks that we know would be good for us, that we know would be helpful for us. And when we take those risks, they always work out well. Maybe not the way we had in mind.
Usually not the way we had.
Usually not the way we had in mind, yeah.
End result, yes. Middleman on how you get there?
No.
Oh, yeah, of course. And again, right. I mean, like I said, I'm always open to every possibility. And even if the job, let's say, I worked there and it just wasn't the place for me, right? Mm-hmm. That's still a good thing I learned about myself. And maybe it's going to bring up another opportunity, because I'll say like, it feels like the universe is purposely designed in ways where I won't get an opportunity. Like I won't get a job, or I won't get something specific. And then the next day I'll hear back from something else. Where I remember I applied for this like internship at Disney last summer. Mm-hmm. I was interviewing for it and I had my heart set on it. And remember I mentioned the NASA position. That position, I heard about that internship like 2 years ago at that point. Mm. And they closed it. They didn't even fill it. So I didn't get it.
Oh my.
And so I was going for the Disney internship. I was really had my heart set on it. And then I saw the internship at NASA and I was like, I'm not going to apply. Cause I have Disney. And then the next week I was like, I got to apply for this NASA thing. Why wouldn't I do that? So I decided to apply and it was almost closed. And then I didn't get Disney. And this was like 2 weeks later. I didn't get Disney, and then the next day, NASA emailed me saying we're going to move forward, with your interview. And I was like, again, just felt like it was designed. It was really exciting.
How old are you?
24.
I just want to take a quick break and bring up something that everybody needs to key in on. He's 24 and he's applying to Disney and NASA.
Yeah.
Now think about that. Normal people at 24 are like Walmart, Amazon,
Yeah.
Disney and NASA, two of the biggest names out there. So I commend you on that, man. And with no fear, there was no if in his mind. He's like, which one should I go to? Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's the law of attraction right there.
Well, he did differentiate, and then he said, why not both? In other words, he actually made the shift midstream.
Why not both? It's like when they ask you if you want chicken or steak. Why not? Yeah, let's put them both on there. Let's see what it do. Yeah.
Well, what I tell people, because like I do have doubts. I mean, I don't know if in my bio I did meet President Biden. I can go more in detail about that a little bit, but I applied for the first ever Mental Health Youth Action Forum, and when I saw it, I was guaranteed I wasn't going to get it. I told myself I wasn't going to get it, but you know what? I told myself, I said, again, that third perspective, and I said, step away from it and just hit the apply button. That's exactly what I did. So
there's a book called The Untethered Soul that really keys in on that voice and separating yourself from it. Yeah. I highly recommend that book. Debbie G. Shout out to Debbie G again. Mm-hmm. Hashtag we love Debbie G.
We do.
Amazing book, Untethered Soul.
Yeah, definitely picked that one up. I haven't read the whole thing through, but after you talked about one time recently, I picked it up, Neil, and yeah, definitely a good book, especially for somebody who's trying to do exactly what you're trying to do.
I think everybody should be trying to do that.
Ultimately, I think that's true. but it's helpful if you're in the space where you're ready for it. I mean, Zane is clearly ready for it, so that's really the best time to take on a book like that.
Real quick, I dove back into I think that book. And went through the bookmarks, and they said something really cool. It was like, think about the suggestions that voice is giving you. You know, when your girlfriend misses your phone call, and you're like, oh man, did I do something wrong? Is she mad at me? You know, or boss, or anything like that happens. That voice is constantly throwing you all kind of negative stuff. It's beating you up. You look in the mirror, you're like, man, I look good today. Well, you could be, or you could have done. You know, that voice. So they said, if you were to take that voice and put it in a separate person, would you be friends with that person? Mm. And then it's like, when you take that voice and put it in a separate person, you know, how would you describe that person? Oh, yeah. Would you take it to meetings with you? And then it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, ick. It's like, yeah, I don't even want to touch or be near that person. And that's here. That's the one you're taking advice from. That's the one you're letting run your, no, not me. Not in this lifetime. Not
or another way to look at the same thing is, if you were to treat your best friend the way you allow that voice to treat you, would you still have a best friend?
Yeah, you wouldn't have no friends.
That's right.
None. You wouldn't even like yourself. And that's where we are. That's where a lot of people are. That's the reason why they don't like themselves. It's the reason why I can't get a lot of people to meditate, because they don't like what's going on up here. And they don't know how to get around that. Tell them meditation is key to that. You know, practice being quiet. And you'll be quiet more often, but it takes in that space to get better at being in that space. So if they're avoiding that space, they're avoiding getting better at being in that space. And that's life, man. That's that pull. That's that push pull. You know.
Yeah, no, I get that because I get what they're experiencing, because like when I first meditate, it is so overwhelming. You know, especially when you haven't meditated in a while and then you meditate. I actually will get headaches when I meditate because I'm so focused and I have, again, a hard time concentrating already. And then also you have like literally a million thoughts going through your head, literally millions. And I feel like what people, again, my experience is like people try to find that center, that stillness when they're meditating. It's like, just let yourself be chaotic at first. Cause like I said, when I first meditate, I have trillions of thoughts going through my head. And I think you just need to embrace that, cause that's that process. Cause then eventually what's so fascinating is like, you'll have those thoughts and all of a sudden you just feel nothing. And it's such a weird feeling, you know, because it's not something we're used to, because the world is so fast paced. Everything's always moving and you're like with yourself silently. And it's kind of scary a bit, but it's really peaceful though. And it feels a little overwhelming, but yeah.
You have to accept the voices. Don't fight them. People first start meditating, they're like, "Oh, why do these voices?" I did it. Why do these voices keep coming? There has to be a level of not a level of acceptance. You got to accept them as they come and push them away as they come. And sooner or later, your brain will start to push them away for you, giving you time to be in that beautiful space of peace that Zane's talking about.
It's funny too, because a lot of people talk about using the meditative advantage to find a way to clear your headspace. I was never able to do it through meditation. I found a different way to do it. I did it through mirror exercises.
Ooh, that's a whole nother topic. Right?
It is another topic, but you know what made it happen for me was I saw an article by Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup series of books. And in the post that he wrote, he talked about how he had used mirror exercises to get rid of that haunting voice that just kept chattering away at him. And he said all he did was he did the mirror exercises for 30 days. And if you don't know what mirror exercises are, basically looking in a mirror and praising yourself, telling yourself, I love you, here's all the good things that I did today, all that kind of stuff. Just building yourself up, really feeling good about yourself while you're looking directly into your own eyes. That's the whole point of the mirror.
Into your soul.
To your soul.
Because you go straight from pupils to souls fast.
Really fast. Oh yeah. It's so fast that first session scares the shit out of you. But nevertheless, if you can keep going, do it for like the 30 days that he recommended. And he isn't the originator of it. I mean, other people have talked about it too. But if you can do those 30 days, it really does quiet that voice. It takes a while. At least for me, it took a while. It took like about 2.5 weeks before I noticed any difference at all. Yeah. But around day 18 or 19, I noticed that the voices were kind of getting softer. By around day 25, they were really soft. And then to my surprise, around day 28, for a moment, they were gone entirely. And that kind of ties into what you were saying, Zane. Like, it's a bit of a shock. Like, wait a minute, that's not the way my head usually goes. But I got to like it. And then I started getting into the meditation after that. And boy, did it make the meditation so much easier.
For the first 18 days, how much were you doing a day?
Well, it varied. I mean, my first day was about 3 seconds because that was all I could tolerate.
But I mean, as let's say the second week, where were you doing like 1 10-minute session, 3 10-minute sessions, 1 half-an-hour session? Like, what were you?
Probably no more than, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 minutes. It wasn't very long.
Okay.
It wasn't very long at all. I mean, I think there were maybe a couple days where I was really going after it, so I would do like 5, 10, 15 minutes, something like that. But most of the time, it was like 60 seconds to 120 seconds.
Yeah, I started off with 3 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, well,
I was just
like you're top flight on every time that you go after something. So that doesn't
at all. I obsess over it, man. I was forced, and I got to. It was 6. I never remember. It was 16 days in of me saying, "Why can't I stop these? Like, why does it keep doing?" And that's when I said, "You know what? Movie The Secret. I'm so happy and thankful that I'm good at meditating. I'm so happy and thankful that I love meditating. I'm so happy and thankful that I enjoy meditating." I started saying that. That was it. I've loved it ever since that day. But I don't actually I never thought about, keeping track. I don't know how long it took me to get to that stillness.
What I do know is this. What made the difference for me was every time I did a day's exercise, I was trying to focus on myself, on the thing I least wanted to focus on, because I knew that's where I needed the most work. So very often it was on being able to tell myself, looking myself in the eyes, I love you, because that was so uncomfortable for me to do. So I pushed myself. That's what I'm going to do today. I'm not going to even do anything else. The only thing I'm going to do with this particular mirror session on this particular day is to make myself stay focused on that for at least 60 seconds. And by the way, 60 seconds is a really long time. It's something you don't want to do.
Yeah, it is.
But it does work effectively, because what I really was doing is I was insisting on going after the thing that was making me most uncomfortable.
You shifting that subconscious, that repetition, shifting your subconscious to think something differently, and then you develop that love. I'm happy for you, brother.
And that is really the truth, because it was the unexpected consequence that went along with it. My self-confidence and my self-love grew immensely by doing that exercise. In fact, I was so psyched by how much gain I had in that 30-day period. I think my first streak, I went like 50 days in a row doing it. I'd only committed to 30 and I just flew past that. But I took a break and I came back, did like another 35, 40 days, and I went through like 3 or 4 of those bursts like that. And by the time I was done, literally most of the time, my brain is quiet. And I created a habit of quietness in my brain that has continued to this day. Now, it's not like there's never any thought coming to my mind that I hadn't really wanted to have come to my mind, but it's not inundation anymore. I haven't been inundated by thoughts in years, simply because I worked on appreciating myself through the mirror work. And then when I did want to do the meditation, I used to actually hate meditation. I wouldn't even do it. And I think the main reason was, like you were talking about, Neil, I kept getting frustrated. I couldn't break through. But I used the mirror exercises to shift my perception about myself and how I felt about myself. And at the same time, as sort of a side benefit, get rid of those voices. And then I went back to the meditation. Meditation was actually fun. It's kind of
the suggestions and the voices were altered. They were a little bit more I love me related than they were before. You threw a little bit of sugar on all of them.
That's right.
And that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Change the voice. I don't think they're going to stop. You have to be a monk in a monastery with 0 responsibilities for your voices, for the voices to just stop. So when I meditate and I'm quiet, and all of a sudden you got to get milked up. Nope. I'm going back to my breathing. Feel a body part, or just count, hear my breath. Stay in that until the next thought comes. And it does suck because it's like jogging. If you take a month off, when you try to get back out there, you suck at it. So it is a lifelong journey, but it yields the greatest rewards, like law of attraction, the ability to create your future with the law of attraction. But with meditation, it's the ability to create peace in your future. Mindfulness, calmness in heavy situations. All of that is the rewards of this daunting task called meditating, but you will grow to love it if you really want to.
Well, that's the other part of it, because once you get to the point, that's really mastering the voices, not silencing them, mastering them so that you're no longer dominated by them. You're the one who's in charge, and the voices are just kind of feeding you some information that you can choose to accept, you can ignore. It's up to you entirely. But now you feel like you're in control. And
which is a huge part, a huge bonus.
And then what goes along with it is you realize that instead of feeling like the voices are an enemy, you start to embrace them like they're useful. Like, they give me stuff that actually is helpful at times. Yeah. That was not the previous experience. But now that I've learned to master myself, now they are in aid of me rather than against me.
Yeah.
You know what? You just made me think of something. I might have to do a video about this, right? You're quiet. The voices are coming at you. You just started meditating. The voices are coming at you. You got to get milk. What about this? What about this person? Oh, I got that bad email. How are you going to handle it? You finally get meditative and you get quiet and you got voices coming at you still, but they're not the same. They're intuitive. You need to call this person tomorrow. It's a different. So you got all these voices, and we were talking about earlier, between being able to weed through and find the right ones. I never actually thought about that as far as meditation, because that is where I get my great ideas. When I meditate, and I do keep pushing aside the milk and the eggs, and I gotta call this person. All of a sudden, I just get this idea out of nowhere, and that'd be my next video. So I need to dive into that and tackle that a little bit more.
Because I tell you, when you can get to the point where you can actually appreciate the voice, where you're actually appreciative that you got that voice. Not only do you feel better about the voice, but the voice feels better about you. And so it becomes mutually supportive. And in that mutual support, an amazing thing comes along, and that is you feel at peace with the voice.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the voice is you.
It's still you.
So for you to support and love that voice is for that voice to support and love you back. It's instant reciprocation. And that's right. What I love about it. And the mirror exercises, I love that too. Like I do games where I stare into my eyes and I'll talk. I'll pretend that on the other side of the glass is God, just taking over that form, and I'll talk, and the stuff you get back is crazy. And then I flip it. I've took it as far as I flipped it, and been God giving myself a message. And then you get I take mirror exercises to the next level. I had to get back into them, but I've done so many different experiments, and it's so funny what your mind will say and throw at you in those situations. But that, You get into your soul. You can't lie to yourself. You stare in the mirror and say the wrong thing, you'll know. You'll be able to see it. You'll know. Yeah. And that's why I love it over there in the mirror.
Hey, Zane, I got to ask you. The show is LOA today, Law of Attraction. We don't actually talk about Law of Attraction a lot, although we tend to do it more on the Friday show than on the other shows, on the other days. So I do it 5 days a week. But the concept has a lot of things that we've talked about over the years, including the skills that we develop over time in terms of being able to manifest what it is that we want to manifest. Now, you, in the story that you've told today about your career path choices and so forth, you were really telling a manifestation story, or a series of manifestation stories, and how you made adjustments to the way you thought about things, about events happening, and then got different results out of it. Mm-hmm. So, what I wanted to do is first ask you, did you think about any of that consciously? Like, yes, I'm going to manifest this new job. Was that ever part of your process? And then I also want Neil to jump in with something that he and I were talking about. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Neil, where you were introducing everybody to the idea of reality as the wall. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the wall.
I want you to jump in on that one. But Zane, first, the first part of it, did you actually think about it as I'm trying to manifest something?
No. And in fact, I was always worried that I would manifest my fears because I remember I had a hard time with rejection growing up. I still somewhat do, not as bad anymore because of that shift I had. But back then when I would be rejected from something, I would think it was a rejection of me as a person, not as whatever it was. And so I would take it very personally. And so to protect that, I kind of built this armor where I said when I went into something, I would tell myself I wouldn't get it. So if I didn't get it, I wouldn't be as disappointed because I expected it. So I actually was kind of worried that I was manifesting I wouldn't get it. So I wouldn't get it. But I don't know. I think also sometimes we tell ourselves that, but in the back of our head, we do think we manifest it. Because, I mean, of course, like I said, when I applied for the Mental Youth Action Forum, it was very competitive. I applied for it and I told myself I wouldn't get it. But I think at the back of my head, I was manifesting that I would get it. Because I would have dreams about it. I would have dreams of getting accepted for some of these things. And sometimes it didn't work out. But, luckily for this, it did. And I wouldn't say you manifest that specific moment, but all the little things that I manifested and all the things I created was why I was able to get something like that.
But believe it or not, I thought your answer was going to be something in that neighborhood, which is why I want to do the second part here. So, Neil, tell him about the exercise that you created, because I think it's really germane and really cool.
Basically, it's like this. The building in DC you're going to be working at, have you ever seen it? Mm-mm. Okay, so when you're picturing yourself in that building, it's not that building. It's it could look different. Right. It could be on the other side of the street. Right. So in your mind, the building that you are seeing yourself working in, since it only exists over there, you could play with it. You could, if you were to say, I run that building, I got a promotion real fast, the Eagle's going to step in and say, you haven't even been there yet. That's next month, but for you to look at the mental building that you created, that's not that building, clearly, because it exists only in your mind, and that one's real and it looks different. If you were to say, I run that building, I got a fast promotion, I'm killing it there, the Eagle can't really say much because it's your building and your mind. You could do what you want. And, when I was talking with Walt, I applied it to, people like me trying to picture what my dad's doing right now. I know my dad. I know him, more than anybody else. But if I try to picture him right now, that's not him. He's over there. This one's in my imagination. He could be on the sofa. I'm picturing him playing tennis. So this version of my dad is not my real dad. So for me to hand him $1 million and say happy birthday, the ego can't mess with that and say, no, you didn't. You can't do that. You know what it would take to do that? It has to let it fly because the mental me just did hand the mental my dad that money, that mental cash. And so I use this as a mental exercise to sit in a good headspace, because when you're vibrating at that frequency, any two things that vibrate at that frequency will naturally pull towards each other. And I call it the wall because basically it's what's on the other side of that wall. I can't see what's on the other side of that wall. So it's, according to science, it's just infinite possibilities. Like you might say, my son's on the other side of that wall. Well, according to science, it's just infinite possibilities. Yeah. So, and that just so happens to be the perfect description of what's going on in my head. infinite possibilities. I can create whatever I want. And so on the other side of that wall, I see as the mental world pushing, penetrating through that wall. And then it eventually thoughts become things are reality. So it's kind of like I try to come up with different ways of seeing things. So when situations hit you, you filter it automatically that way and you see the best case outcome. So you're no longer scared or fearful of what could be because you're just, I know what's going to happen. It's on the other side of the wall. It's coming through. It'll be here soon. And so it just feeds so many different aspects of the law of attraction. I try to compound exercises, but yeah, that's where I'm at with it. And I got to tell you, I've been doing it for, a week or so now. But I've been doing it for really big things. And, of course they take more time because I see them as taking more time. So I don't have any fruits of this labor yet, but it's a combination of the exercises that I used to retire at the age of 28 and move to Florida and fly and all this other stuff that I'd be doing. So all I did was compound those exercises to make them into something more beautiful. So I know the fruits are coming. Just so happens my Law of Attraction Summit is coming up on the 21st. So awesome. I'm looking forward to, all of that.
Yeah, I really love it.
For me,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that. And I feel like that's kind of like something that I was somewhat doing when I was writing, though. Because again, it was that outlet where I was able to kind of think anything I wanted, anything. And I didn't do that with my life. But when I was able to write, I did. And I wanted to give a speech on, I think that it was the speech, the whole theme was about uncharted territory, and people were talking about technology and stuff. And I was like, storytellers are uncharted territory. And so is writing, because your mind can produce, like you just said, unlimited possibilities in your head, and you create it. I think you live in that space, like you said, and you kind of shift your attitude that I can do this and bring it to reality. So not exactly what you described, but kind of like writing gave me that process, though, of what you're thinking. I think that's super cool.
Yeah. And the thing I love about Neo's process is that it's the best way I've ever heard of to truly separate what you're imagining from results. Because for most processes, we will do the process and then we're looking for the result at some point. But with Neo's approach, you never need to look for the results. Ever. Because it's all complete. It's all complete within the imagined sphere that you created. There is nothing else to do. It's all done, and you can appreciate that result there. You don't have to see the real result come into the real world. So if it doesn't come into the real world, it's irrelevant. It isn't even part of the conversation because it already took place in the imagined world.
You're bypassing the middleman. All the how and what if and conversations and meetings that need to happen to get to that point, you're bypassing all of that, which is one of the number one rules in law of attraction anyway. Right. See the end. Don't worry about how you get there. Like Zane has an end place where he wants to be. Moving to DC and getting this gig is just a step.
Yeah.
He didn't see it. Last year he didn't see this moving to but it's just a step. So I find that we're always wrong when trying to predict the middleman in some way. So just go straight to the outcome and focus on that. And that's one of the things, like Walt said, I love about this exercise. The middleman is the farthest thing from my mind. I'm enjoying the win already. I'm celebrating. It's already happened. What it took to get here, whatever. But I like, that's the surprise about life, seeing how you get there. I'll enjoy that aspect of it,
And then something that I, try and tell people, and I try to live by this, is, be open to every single possibility. Whatever comes your way. Again, I think people are held back by their fear or what they don't know. I mean, like I said, I got that internship at General Motors. I didn't know a single thing about cars. I didn't think I really wanted to work in the car industry either. But it was like a great opportunity, and I thought the position was perfect for what I wanted to learn. And I was able to have a great internship, and I learned a lot, and I gained a lot of connections there. So, and even going to meet President Biden, I don't think this stuff would ever be possible for me, but be open to every single possibility. Even if it's something that you're like, I don't know if that is something that I would be passionate about. You never know. Just try it out. That's what I say.
If you ever want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because his plans for you are so much bigger than yours. And when you're open, like he said, he never planned on meeting the president, but he was open to God's plan and he ended up meeting the president. Now he's moving to DC where the president lived. Gotta be open, close-minded. It's just, you're blocking yourself. You're literally putting yourself in a bubble and not enabling yourself to grow or anything inside. You got to stay open.
Yeah, I gave a speech. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Oh, quickly,
No,
yeah,
go ahead.
I gave a speech one time for an alumni night at my university 2 years ago because I got a scholarship, and I told people to imagine their most successful self, and they could see that destination, right? And then I asked them to triple that success, and a lot of them said they had a hard time actually envisioning what that actually looked like. And I said that, like you said, we're in a bubble, and we may want to be successful, but like that's still our bubble of success, right? And we don't go into like what the heck is possible out there, like completely in the stars. And I say at the end, even though it looks like they're in the stars, they're still within us. We just have to tap into it. But it feels like it's out of our reach, but it's not.
It's us. We are made of star stuff.
We are. Joni Mitchell had it right. We are stardust.
I love that stardust.
Hey, Zane, I want to ask you about one more thing because we're kind of running out of time. You have a magazine. You got to tell people about the magazine.
I started Positive Vibes Magazine, which is an online magazine where we just tell like the authentic stories of the mental health experience. And I started in, right when the pandemic started in May of 2020.
Good timing.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people were tapping into some potential during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of podcasts came. I think because a lot of times the pandemic kind of left people purposeless. And I think some people actually like ran with that purposeless and decided to do something cool or create
purpose.
Yeah. Gave themselves it. Anyway, so it was actually a class project. We had to create our own publication for this project. And I decided I had this moment and I was like, what if I actually start this? And I asked my friend and she was interested too. So we just started off with blog posts about mental health. And then we actually had someone reach out that wanted to be interviewed, and that changed literally everything. Nice. Now we don't write about we don't do blog posts or anything like that. We just focus on literally people's storytelling, where we tell the stories of people and their lived experience. And we talk about the raw truth, we had someone that went into detail about their assault. We had someone who talked about how they were involved in gangs and now they're a celebrity publicist, stuff like that. I mean, these stories were like, they really transformed their life and they really turned their traumas into like wisdom and opportunity. And I think that's just so inspiring.
You gotta get me on there, Zane. You gotta get me in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Get Neil on there. He will be a winning contribution. I promise you.
Oh, I'll email you.
Yeah, get with me.
You will not go wrong having Neil Positivity as part of the magazine. Absolutely true. And I love the fact.
Perfect name for the perfect, Positive Vibes magazine.
Right? Yeah. Neil Positivity? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, with a name like that, he fits in anywhere. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
That's my jam. That's why I chose it. I see you can't go wrong with that.
That's right. Yeah, that's good stuff. But I love what you have done with that. Do you have plans for where that's going to go, where Positive Vibes Magazine is going to go?
No, I really don't. Right now, I just want to focus on just telling stories and keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And we definitely have a list of people that we have to still release stories on. So we have a couple of stories we still need to release, like 5 or 6 or 7. So we always have content coming out, and we're always excited to share their stories. So I don't have a big ambitious goal for what the magazine is going to contribute or become, because I just want to focus on that storytelling aspect. Even if it stays where it is, I'm fine with that. I just love the storytelling part of it. But I have learned how much of a need positive storytelling is, that people really want. And what I would love to see, I wish there would be some producer that would pick up on it. I would love there to be a positive news network or a positive news channel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's all it's about. And in positive,
we're working on that. We're working on it.
I want that to be a thing.
Hashtag WG.
You're going to do that. Please loop me in, because I've wanted to see that for a long time. And I know John Krasinski was doing the happy news. I don't think happy news is what I would be going for. It's the positive news, like people who are making a difference. And sometimes you have to shine a light on the bad stuff that's going on in the world and show the people that are doing the light work, though. So I'm happy you all are working on something like that.
How often do you come out, and how can they reach it?
Yeah.
You can find the magazine, Positive Vibes Mag. That's the handle. And then all my handles are my name. So find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. So reach out about anything you want to talk about.
And how often? Is it weekly or?
How often do we release stories?
Yeah.
Yeah, we release once. We try to do once a week, but If not, we'll release it like every other week then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check them out, y'all. Check them out. I want to definitely see what kind of information I can pull off your recent guests.
Yeah, we'll link to your LinkedIn too, because I guess that's the best place to find it.
Yeah, that's I'm most active on there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And to kind of pile on to what you were saying, I love the fact that you are passionate about being a storyteller, because ultimately that is the passing of good news. That is a good news podcast. I mean, you saw when you saw the credits. I mean, most people listening to the show are only hearing the audio, 99% of them. But those few who see the video also see that, and I actually say it in the intro, that this is your daily dose of happy. Well, daily dose of happy to me means that everybody who's coming onto the show is going to feel better by the time they're done, whether they're listening, whether they're a guest, whether they're a co-host, whether they are the host himself, who also wants to be in that space. And in the process that we get there is inevitably through storytelling. So I'm 100% on board with you about your love of the storytelling. And I just want to tell you, connect the two together, because that is how you spread good news.
And that's why the magazine was the opportunity for me to connect the, again, mental health disability advocacy that I love doing with storytelling. I think that's the most powerful way you can advocate, is telling your story. And again, the vibration ripple effect, where someone else shares their story and then it impacts 100 people, and then it keeps moving on until it creates that, I don't know, paradigm cultural shift or whatever. Something like that.
Let's do it.
Really good. I got one more thing I got to do before we finish for the day, and this is something I do with all of our giving guests who join us on the show today. There are many people whom you've never met, whom you've never seen, who perhaps read Positive Vibes magazine, who heard you on a podcast, who heard you in one of the other ways that you interact with the public, and you touch their lives and you help them in some way that you never knew about. We never get credit for those, not publicly. So I like to give credit by saying on their behalf, thank you for what you've been doing. Thank you for what you're continuing to do. Thank you for what you will be doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
Definitely. And shout out to my first responders and military.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys as well. And thank you to our listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.